It's movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From the top down to the bottom. He's gonna let you know if you should stay home or if you should go. Might even yell if it's a spectacle. From San Francisco to Long Island. 'Cause nothing's better than a motion video.
It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando,
And I'm Mary Yerina.
and this is It's Movie Time. And boy, we have a good one today, Mary.
Well, just give it away, John.
All right, it's called American Fiction. And I see it creeping up towards Oscar in some way or another. Either as a film, it's probably not going to be seen by enough people, but Jeffrey Wright's performance should be nominated. Do you
I
think?
agree.
You agree?
I agree. And I also think the writer, director, and I think he co-produced as well, Cord Jefferson, will likely get a nod, especially for adapted screenplay.
Good, good. Set it up for us, Mary.
So Jeffrey Wright plays Monk Ellison, Thelonious Monk Ellison, who is a college professor of English and literature and a fiction writer who has been having trouble selling his books and is currently looking for a publisher for his newest novel. And he's informed by his agent that he's being told that his books aren't black enough.
You know, and Mary, let me say that I don't see that Monk really has a writer's block.
No, he doesn't at all.
Yeah, which
He's-
is kind of strange, you would have thought, but no.
No, and what he's being told and what he's seeing is the success of other writers who write what would be considered pandering to the tropes and stereotypes of the black experience in America. And so he decides to, as a pointed joke, write My Pathology with an F.
Right.
My Pathology, to throw in every possible stereotype and trope as a joke. And it turns out that it garners interest, and how that plays out in terms of book sales and advances and a movie deal, takes part of the rest of the movie. The other part that I found surprising, which wasn't as evident in the trailer, is that it coincides with a family drama of what his real life is like and what his family is like.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought, now and then I thought, wow, they're really pushing this black life, high-low class business in his writing. Maybe just a little bit too much, but I did find, as you just expressed, that the family drama is quite interesting.
It's quite interesting, and it's so well cast. It was a pleasure to watch all of these actors in their roles, because it's a very highly accomplished family, but it's also a very dysfunctional family.
Yes, and while he is he's playing with the street culture and the argot that he so well puts into his novel and makes people think that he's really a convict, or he's on the run, he's a fugitive on the run.
Under a pseudonym.
Under a pseudonym, right. But that in fact they're actually a upper middle class family. I mean, they've got two doctors and a PhD. They have a dad whom we don't see, who's apparently pretty bright. So I thought that there was something I had to consider a little bit. The subject of his book that reads so much acclaim is down below, and yet they're living a conflicted life up above. And so that's where the tensions and the interest in the film really lies for me. Though I thought it was a little bit of a cop-out that he wasn't just a laborer, something, you know what I mean?
Well, then you wouldn't have an accomplished writer, because there are some funny scenes with regards to him fighting for what he believes is right in his work, especially the scene at the bookstore where he finds his novels in the African American Studies section and berates a low level store clerk about where his books are, and proceeds to like take all of the copies and is carrying them to a different part of the store. So there are some very funny moments of that dichotomy of somebody who does have his PhDs, obviously very intelligent, and he's very frustrated that the world isn't up to his standard.
Oh yes, and you have good friends who are academicians, as I do, and
you're an academician
and
yourself.
me too, right? And when you get to the writing, which is always a sticky and difficult part, particularly let's say profs at OSU who really have to publish, it's always it's always difficult to be able to comply with the expectations of your colleagues when in fact Jeffrey Wright's character, Thelonious Monk here, really had a notion that he should write, that he was trying to trying to comply with the standards that don't really align with his own spirituality as a writer. I guess I'm saying is that many academic writers are writing a kind of language and thought process that isn't always natural to them, but they need to do it in order to get published and in order to get tenure. So this really hits it, I thought, very well. It goes a little bit over the top.
Well, this is also more about him being published as a marketable writer to the public, not in academic circles. And so you have that layer of success at the published word level, and then you have that layer of the success of the rights have been purchased for cinematic expression of the story, and we get both of those layers here, and it's really, you can see him struggling, and what makes Jeffrey Wright's performance so wonderful is you can see on his face that he's struggling with this dichotomy of what he believes to be right and should be right, with how much do you debase yourself and pander to what's marketable in an industry that is still controlled by white people / white men, and what their stereotypes are of what will sell in terms of stories about black.
Oh yeah.
So the irony is with the overall movie that you're sold on him debasing himself to write My Pathology, and then you're given this story of what his family is, which is complex, accomplished, complex, upper middle class, dysfunctional, much deeper and more humanistic than the tropes of My Pathology, which has, gun violence, father abandonment of children, drugs, these stories that Hollywood and book publishers think will sell, and that the other type of story about people of color will not sell. So you have this long-running dichotomy throughout the whole movie of that tension, which is very, in terms of writing, very clever. I think it was probably very hard to do to sustain it over a 2-hour film, and I thought Cord Jefferson did a very good job in his feature film debut, by the way, as a writer and director.
Yes, and it is so universal in its approaches, such as to the difficulties of writing and the difficulties of gaining the approbation of your colleagues. Best scene, the one where they're berating him for making the co-ed in his class cry.
Oh, which opens the film, actually.
I know, and it's
which you could relate to.
No, I can so definitely. And what Wright is so good in underplaying all of this, but his face expresses his almost disbelief. For instance, the student didn't like the N-word, up on the board, and
Which
that's
was
one
the
of my
title of the book that they're discussing.
Yes,
So
thank
it's
you.
not like it was up
Yeah,
there.
it's one of Flannery
randomly.
O'Connor's really most brilliant stories. But even when I read it years ago, I said, "Geez," she says, "The Artificial Nigger? Wow, that's some kind of a title." But Flannery O'Connor, of course, doesn't care, and she's got it spot on for that story, and perfect and so right. Just expresses his frustration as a professor is trying to open up the minds of his students, and this female student, is offended by that, not realizing there's a difference between calling somebody that and actually using it as a title that does refer importantly to the story. So yes. So and Wright is just perfect because he so seemingly underplays, but he is smoldering inside, and his face is a perfect tablet for his almost disbelief. His fellow American, his fellow.
And he really has to carry this film and carry that disbelief about not only that student and the publishing world and the movie world, but also with his family.
Yes.
And he is in, I think, almost every scene.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about that family situation on Back Talk. And people have to tune in to the podcast experience, WCBE.org, and they'll be able to hear that and hear more about American fiction.
It's movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From the top down to the bottom. He's gonna let you know if you should stay home or if you should go. Might even yell if it's a